so,
Hello.
so much for joining me today. It's already been a fascinating conversation and we haven't even started.
We
So
talked
would
a
you
lot.
mind, exactly, everything we've said before? Well, you guys will just have to imagine. Well, would you mind to introduce yourself? Anything whatever, you can say anything you want, really.
Yeah, of course. First, obviously, it's great to meet you and talk to you. We're going to touch upon some topics that we spoke about in the past 20 minutes before we started. But essentially, yeah, so obviously, I'm a behavioral scientist in marketing and advertising. So essentially, it's consumer behavior, the science behind marketing. And the reason we obviously exist in this world and grew a lot is because of people are not rational. There were changing habits after COVID, the rise of AI and behavioral technology. So I was speaking about AI before AI was a hot topic, like
Hmm.
4 or 5 years ago, and then we've developed this like behavioral science department. So essentially, that's what I am. I'm a consulting director at Behave, a behavioral science consultancy. Hopefully, training people, around behavioral science, behavioral technology, how to really understand what drives people. So that's essentially what I do. I train a lot of people around that and around why it's really essential to get to the bottom of behavior, because
Hmm.
it doesn't really only help brands and companies in general to exist in this world and create more value and help different different people, but also it helps in really helping charities, for example, to
Yep.
reinforce positive reinforcement, create behavioral change for good. So for using that knowledge around behavioral science and behavioral technology to
That was exactly
inspire.
my previous job. I worked for a
Yes,
nonprofit before to do
exactly,
research on supporter behavior and
exactly.
exactly looking at that. So that's amazing work you're doing.
It's honestly, it's fascinating. Even if you look at, let's say, the educational sector, it's anchored in promotion. It's anchored in really encouraging people, making it quite easy for them to actually remove those barriers. So everything we do is anchored in behavioral science. And I
Hmm.
always give the example of Spock. Spock
Yeah.
is quite rational. I don't know if people know Spock. Basically, your consumers are not Spock. It's a common, I guess, it's common knowledge for brands sometimes to treat their consumers as very rational, but actually we're Homer Simpsons eating crisps next to a TV show. We stay on really bad contracts, we date the wrong people, we literally, when we pay, with our contactless, with our phone, we pay more than we usually would. Like, all of that is driven by irrationality. So really understanding and owning that factor around the fact that we're not really rational is what I'm preaching out there and showing out there. And it helps a lot of brand growing. Like, we've got case studies that showcase that actually your consumers are not driven by demographics. Otherwise we would all be the same. Someone in their late 20s, early 30s would be the same as another person, but that's not the case. And the world is moving through that because brands saw that during COVID, their consumers were completely shifting their habits. They couldn't understand them. They were a bit lost. And so that's why we also grew a lot, because what we were talking about pre-COVID actually came to play post-COVID. And it's fascinating to look at how we all changed, but also didn't change. So that's yeah, that's what I do basically. Some
So
of what I do.
interesting. Like a different conversation for another time to dig further into that.
Exactly,
We have loads
exactly.
of questions there and a lot to talk about.
Yeah,
We'll do another one. We'll do something else together around more work-related things. But
can't wait.
absolutely. But for this one, you also, I think, have a really strong point of view. I mean, all of us women who had to build ourselves,
Yeah,
especially coming from diverse background and having to build ourselves in this industry or in tech in general, have
yeah.
faced some challenges, and have faced some, like, it took us a while, or it took like a lot of self-discovery, I think, in the process.
A lot of resilience, I'd say, a lot of resilience, and a lot of just like making sure that you show up every single day, twice or even more, as much as a guy. So yeah, for sure. So I can't wait to dive into this topic. I have a lot to say, honestly.
I can't wait. I always felt the same. Having to have the biggest pair of something in the room is a woman's job.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
but what do you think is the biggest challenges that women face in leadership position nowadays?
I
What do
think
you feel?
there are a couple of challenges. I think if you look at it, even from a behavioral point of view, I'm not going into detail in that, but just to start, there are a lot of confirmation biases and unconscious biases that take place whenever you're in a room to earn a spot on a table. I think we have to show up constantly. We need to be resilient constantly, but also it feels like there's this, I'm not going to say imposter syndrome, but this like complex like inferiority every time we're potentially in a room. I think that's a big challenge because we're anchored before we even step somewhere around the fact that, oh, you know what, because they look this way, because they're this gender, because, you know, they might know more, because historically that was the case. I think our generation as well, if you speak about millennial, we grew up obviously with our moms, our aunts, changing the face of the world. You know, I grew up, my mom is my role model, my grandmother is my, I love them to death. My aunts, I have 7 aunts, you know, they are amazing. I don't have uncles, just aunts. I have their husbands, but I grew up with this, with those strong women in Lebanon, in the Middle East, that taught me as a person, you know what? Why? Who are those people to stop you and hinder you from your potential as a person? But I do think that sadly, because a lot of people were not like, I guess, lucky enough to have that view and, you know, their eyes open since they were a kid, a lot of women, especially, you know, depending on their backgrounds, I feel a bit hindered by the fact that they don't have potential experiences or personal experiences or connections or someone to look up to that's this person. I was obviously lucky enough, and if they see this, lucky enough to have been surrounded with strong women my whole life, that were and taught me to not hinder myself. And I want to be that woman now for other girls and women who don't have that voice. And that's why I build my career so much, because I want to be that person and create more people like that and just help to pick my part of the world and make an impact there. You know, it's really important because then that's going to do a domino effect. So I'd say we always feel like we as women are not meant to be as part of a room. And we do feel like sometimes because of history and the experiences that we went through, and even family dynamics and just the world and culture and societies in general, this tension is a reflection of what we see going on in conference rooms. Unless you have those role models and those people that are obviously, thank God you're doing this as well, are growing in size and in numbers that can inspire other women and create that real sense of equality beyond the talk, you know, in actual actions and numbers in business.
I completely agree. I mean, a lot of what you're saying has been my experience as well. Strong female role models growing up.
Exactly. And yeah, exactly. And we have a lot in common, and we speak about our experiences, we speak about our backgrounds, and you know how resilient we are. But also, you need to have that constant base of women you look up to, because the world tends to create this. The world is very ambiguous. Life is ambiguous. Life is challenging. Life has its ups and downs. And during those downs, if you don't have those people that you look up to, it could get hard, because then you're surrounded by that. It's a bias called the self-explanatory theory and bias, where essentially we think we know the world very well, but actually we know it based on our experiences and what we relate to. So our perception of money is something because we're exposed to that. Our perception of work, our perception of a strong person, our perception of women are seen as being bossy whenever we're assertive, and that's also another challenge. But actually, no, there's a difference between being a nice person and a good person. You know your character is good, you know that you show up, but the problem is if you're too we tend to be people pleasers as women. If you conform a lot, then you hinder yourself from being an innovator. And the problem is sometimes you need to step up. Sometimes you need to encourage women to have a stronger voice. And I think a big challenge we have is sometimes we seem bossy when actually we're just doing what men are doing, you know?
That's been an historical problem. Whenever a woman
Exactly.
is a bit more assertive, she's a, oh, we know
Boss.
the, yeah, exactly.
Something, exactly. But what's the
Exactly.
problem with that? Look at Beyonce's song, Alien Superstar. She's about, you know,
Yeah.
why not? You're unique, you're yourself, you know, create your own potential. And you know, when I started, and from a personal perspective, when I moved to London, I'm from Lebanon, so I've only got the Lebanese passport. So when I moved to London about 6 years ago, and I came to do my master's at Imperial College, I met like obviously lifelong friends, you know, again, if I see that, I love them to death as well. Like, and basically, after I finished my master's, because I only have the Lebanese passport, and back then it was really hard to get a visa to stay in London, like extremely hard. Every Lebanese person left. Everyone was like, yeah, it's impossible. Even if you went to Imperial, even if you did this great degree, even if you have this experience from Dubai, like even if you've done this, it's so hard, it's impossible. I said, you know what? I'm not gonna listen to you. I think I've got that potential. Like I think I can do it if I want to. Let me just try. And my
Mhm.
mom still remembers the scene. She still talks about it, where I took my stuff from Lebanon because I was in London. I went back to Lebanon a bit during Christmas, and she still remembers. I came with my like suitcase to London. Obviously, like took an apartment to a couple of friends, and I was like, I'm not going to speak to you for potentially a month or just a bit. Just put my phone on airplane mode. I've got this like big interview lined up. Like I really want to do it. I really want to ace it. I'm going to focus on it. Literally put my phone on airplane mode for a month, didn't listen to any negative thoughts, literally no negative thoughts around me. And I just shut my phone and I worked on it and I got the job. I got sponsored. And you know, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be here, or at least like in London or sitting here or that far in my career, because if if I wasn't as kind of resilient and focused every step of the way and determined about the potential I have. If I have that potential, it means that more women have that potential. The problem is it's hindered. So I just want more women to know that they've got that and stop hindering your potential. So obviously we're on a mission, Emma, and we'll keep going.
Absolutely. And that also kind of leads us to the next question of what advice you would give to a woman who wants to be a leader in her field, because that is part of it, right? Do
For
not
sure.
hinder your potential. Like believe in yourself more than anyone else.
Yeah.
Um,
I think the first thing I'd say is know your core. Like know why you're doing what you're doing. So if you have a passion, if you want to create something, like I'm not going to say fake it till you make it because it's not true, but think yourself as a visionary because it's almost true. Think that you are a visionary. That's how I approached it. I was like, okay, you know what? I talk about AI. I've been speaking about AI for the past 5 years. Before it was even a hot topic, I've been so focused on finding the right AI partners, and they know who they are if they're watching this, but I'm finding them and making sure that we grow that. And when again it wasn't a hot topic because in my mind literally I was so convinced that this is what I'm seeing. So have that strategic vision, have big picture thinking, think of yourself as a pioneer before you are even a pioneer. And if you believe in spirituality, it's the law of affirmation, right?
yeah.
It's basically believe that you're this person before you even do it. Honestly, it
Be that
helps.
person to
Be that
manifest
person,
reality.
completely be that person and think it's your reality, because honestly it happens when you have an idea in mind and you're so convinced about it because you've done your research, you potentially learned a lot of things, you went through education, or even if not, you went through work experience, you've done your things, and it's not your gender is just what people see. So basically be a visionary when you step in, literally when you start your career, even if you're still at university, think yourself as a visionary. If you don't believe it, people are not going to believe it. So just start believing it. That's my first advice. And obviously, second one leads me to my second thing: find mentors, because those mentors and coaches are going to be the one that are going to cultivate that. So my first boss in Dubai, Catherine, she's amazing. She's now the head of global brand strategy at Instagram in San Francisco. And basically, she was the CSO when I was at BBDO in Dubai. And she honestly was, I think, one of the best people I ever worked with, also obviously back then, because she believed in me. I had one thought, literally one thought in the strategy deck. So I was a strategic planner in advertising. And she was like, let's open that page. And she just cultivated my confidence. She was like, okay, how did you think about this? How did you crack this? And I was like, okay, actually, wait, I have really good ideas. Oh, potentially, let me think about it. And she kept cultivating that. And she kept saying, you know what, let's dig further. So she kind of took me under her wing and was my mentor. My second one is Jala also. She basically was the strategy manager at BBDO, and then obviously was one of my it was like my second mentor, also amazing. And two women, literally two strong women, were my first managers. And they were amazing because they saw what I saw in me, or what my mom used to tell me from a personal point of view, or my aunts and my grandma. But I just it didn't come to life at work. But luckily enough, it came to life at my first job with two women that were really inspiring. So find mentors and go with it. And that's who I'm obviously being at the moment, obviously like after years, to other people, because I've had those mentors. I'm obviously a mentor now, but I've had the right people throughout.
Agree. So finding your mentors, which is amazing. It's an amazing experience that you had two amazing mentors right off the gate. I think
Yeah,
that's really helped spearhead your career because you from the first time you knew that you can do it.
exactly.
You had more
exactly.
people telling you that you can do it.
Could be. What was also amazing is even before I had that job at university, Layla was my marketing teacher during my undergrad, and she was, I think, if I think about it, before my career mentor, she was my first mentor before I even stepped into the career world, because she was a self-made woman beyond, again, my mom and my family in the Middle East, that built herself, and obviously is like giving was like the best like marketing teacher. And she also like took me under her wing because she spotted my passion specifically when I was 17 for consumer behavior. When I was 17, I felt like it was because I was so fascinated by people. It also comes from when I was younger, I kept asking my mom questions and Google didn't exist. So she bought me 1,000 Reasons Why books and stuff like that. So I was always curious. So again, curious about people. And marketing is all about talking to people, and it's about what we see in the world, what we perceive, the brands and the cues that we communicate with. So Layla spotted this. And funnily enough, she was also my neighbor because I was very tiny. But again, she was like my teacher, so she was a big mentor for me. And hopefully, she's mentoring a lot of different people. But yeah, I'd say three women from an academic and professional point of view: Catherine, Layla, and Jala. And then my mom and my aunt and my grandma. So I was surrounded by such amazing woman, which said that I never even thought that it was there was I never even in my mind it was like, okay, that's like the norm, you know. And I know, and when I grew up a bit, I knew that that was not the norm around the world, and I knew subconsciously also in the Middle East that it wasn't the norm throughout my life, obviously. But I just tried to brush it off and be like, oh no, you know what, like at the end of the day, like I won't let them affect me. But now I'm using that power to help others because I know, and I know through experiences and my friends' experiences sometimes and people around me, you know, that it's tough to maintain consistency and tell yourself you're confident and tell yourself you're a visionary and tell yourself you're a boss woman when people around you try to hinder your growth, especially ego in certain rooms and in certain industries.
We've all been there.
Yes, exactly. I know. I've experienced it as well, but I always go back to my center. So I've built this center in my mind, in my heart, where whenever this happens, because I've experienced it very frequently, I go back to my center. Okay, you know who you are, you know what you've built, you know your mind, you know how you think, you know your perspective, you know your creativity. Remember that, and I back to my A game. So it's about anchoring. It's also using behavioral science. So
Yeah,
preach what you do. So sorry, do what you preach. So like just go for it and basically anchor yourself in growth and success and inspiring others. Because if I'm not a constant, then how am I gonna help the girls that I mentor? How am I gonna help people around me, like my sisters as well, my cousins? Like how am I going and my if I get to have children eventually, like, how am I going to be this inspiring person if I don't have that inner ground to help? Because if we all lose it, then the world's gonna end. So I'm trying to be this consistent voice
hmm,
of just stick with it. We're gonna get there. We're gonna get there. We're gonna get there. But women have to lift other women.
yeah.
Otherwise, we're not gonna get there. If women try to compete with each other and try to step on another woman and try to hinder that growth, then we're the problem. So it's all about empowering other women.
I think that first is the core of literally the core of the name of the project, Women
Exactly.
Lifting Women.
Exactly.
I
Yes,
am a
exactly.
great
Yes,
believer in that statement. And I
exactly.
think that also answers kind of like your experience with discrimination and how you
Hmm.
dealt with it. Go back to who you are, know yourself, believe in
Completely.
yourself more than anything, and everything else
Exactly.
will go away.
Completely, exactly. Like that's why like the name like Women Lifting Women was so like it just speaks to my heart, honestly, because the amounts of times that sometimes it's not a man that's the problem, often, honestly, sometimes it's a woman. And I think in my experience, obviously I had great experiences with women at work. I've had amazing experiences, but sometimes in some instances it were women that were kind of trying to bring me down, or not bring me down, but trying to like prove themselves, bring me down. So it's like if
Yeah,
my light shines, doesn't mean that your light can't, but we need to help each other to grow together. But if you're not one team, then how are we going to make any progress? But most of the time it was really positive experiences. It's just that in most times when a woman is discriminated against, she's going to use this against another woman to try to prove herself. So the problem is not women. It's just in general how they feel and how that reflects their insecurities and how they use the insecurities against another woman. The core of it is not women, but then women have to react to it in a better way sometimes.
we have to change patterns. We don't need to bring anyone
Ex-
else down to grow.
Completely,
Seeing
completely.
another woman succeed is not
Exactly.
anything. It's not a criticism towards ourselves. It's
Exactly.
a light and encouragement that more women are doing it. It's amazing.
A 1,000%. 1,000%.
But we're so programmed to compete, like, because we're taught by society that we're
Mm.
supposed to compete. Like, all of those are problems, like our societal, our behavioral problems. That's
Yes.
how we were raised, how we were like, oh, you're pretty, like, we constantly are compared. And we need to
Completely.
stop.
Exactly, exactly. It needs to stop, and like it's not gonna stop like this, but it's gonna stop little like this podcast, like what you're doing at the moment, this project as well. Those are things that are going to help, because like you're giving women a voice, you're addressing issues, you're addressing real challenges, you're addressing what worked and what has worked for a certain woman and what hasn't. So those types of projects help, and hopefully there are going to obviously be more and things like that. But this is amazing, honestly.
That is
Yeah.
so kind. I really, really appreciate it. And hopefully,
Yes.
yes, I feel the most fortunate out of this process,
Yeah.
because I feel I got the most, because I get to speak to a lot of amazing women, and I feel
Well,
super
we get to speak to
inspired.
you as well, so it's really good for us.
Thank you. I always feel so inspired after each of them, and getting to know so many amazing women. I always say that the person who got the most out of this is me. So I'm very lucky.
Good.
Um, and I think that hopefully this project, any, like, each of us think about it and decide to do something. That you only make change if you, like, you can only change yourself, right?
Completely, exactly. The problem is, honestly, even in this world, like when you're a woman, it doesn't come with easy cues in anything in life. Even when you walk on the streets, you can be stopped by someone. You just don't want to be bothered. You know the amount of times this happens. I'm like, I'm in my zone. I don't want to be bothered just because I look like a woman and I'm a woman. Obviously, I'm a woman. I look like, but I look like a woman. Obviously, so I'm a woman. I'm not talking to you. I'm trying to focus. I'm trying to listen to a podcast. I'm trying to walk on the streets to get from A to B. Stop
Yeah.
disturbing me. And the problem is we're hijacked constantly as women. Honestly, we're hijacked constantly, meaning that our focus is stopped and stepped on when we're not even asking for it to be stepped on. One, this is the first thing. The second thing is often it happens without our approval or consent.
Yeah.
Anything. It's like, okay, because you think you're superior, you can think this way and you can behave this way and you can come talk to me when I didn't even give you any positive cue that you can come and talk to me. So again, not even in the workplace, in general in life, we come with a lot of baggage because of what we look like. So it's just very important for us to just make sure that we obviously like lift each other up and all of that, but to know that those things shouldn't be distractions. Those things
Mhm.
happen. Those things are part of the world. Obviously, it's going to change with initiatives. It's not about telling you not to maybe dress a certain way or be because you can wear like a sweater and they could like follow you. But it's all about educating them and making this a better world and just having more regulations. And in the Middle East, it's not as regulated. It's not in the law. You're not protected in the law. At least here, you're protected in the law, but you still get hijacked. But it needs to
I
be
mean,
better
let me
monitored,
tell you,
honestly.
even in Israel, it's protected by the law, like, so Middle East, protected by the law in Israel, but men allow themselves to do a
Yeah, yeah,
whole range of things.
exactly, because society taught them to allow themselves, and society taught them that they have the potential to succeed. And another thing that I wanted to talk about is honestly, like the job or the day-to-day job was designed for men in general because they have someone at home that can do their chores and do all that. But now, as women, we obviously are, especially women like us, we work a lot and we love it because we love working, we love our career, it's who we are, it's our growth. But then it's not designed for us, it's designed to burn us out. Luckily enough, we're doing projects and jobs that we love or we're never going to burn out because we're so passionate about them. We've got flexibility, we're in great companies, like we've got that. We're lucky enough to have that, great people around us constantly, but not everyone is that lucky. Women
Mhm.
are expected to do everything, at the same time succeed to some extent in their career, and at the same time in the very tough world financially make some money to sustain and travel and live their lives. It's a very, very rough situation where you're trying to balance out your, I guess, personal life as a woman, or personal life as in you're traveling, seeing your friends, being out, but also having that like corporate life. So there's that work-life balance that needs to be a bit more like reshaped for women at the moment because it's not fair on them to carry that much. But we're multitaskers, we're born multitaskers, and people think we're the biggest multitaskers on earth, but there's so much you could do. We're not that women here, we're not that mannequin, we're not again, set in stone. We have feelings, we have emotions. It's time to take them into account and adapt the world to us. Even your tech, sometimes the tech is very Western driven, but also man driven. In
Yeah.
health, a lot of research and statistics are very men driven. Even crash courses and crash tests in cars are made for men. It's time to change that pace, and hopefully we're in tech, we're growing towards that word. I want to be one of those advocates, so hopefully we'll get there at some point.
I think there's a lot of problem when tech is designed by men or any product. We found it multiple times when product is
Completely.
designed by a very homogeneous group of people, men or
Exactly.
otherwise, you see that their implementation and then the suitability for other parts of society is quite limited. VR is the most classic. I mean, I use VR
That
goggles
was about, yeah,
is the most common example, designed by men to make women nauseous. It took
completely,
a while.
completely. That's what happened, right? Even if you talk about the most controversial and taboo topics, everything has been designed to make women nauseous and keep men just, like going through the world. Again, I think it's very easy to say, what, like there's more equality, but actually, as a woman, if you're not a woman, as a woman on a day to day, you feel like it's not really there. Again,
Mm,
from the day you wake up, if you were to do some ethnography research with a woman, so observational research, her day to day would be very different. She would be disrespected at least once every 6 hours
yeah.
without even knowing it, because it's so anchored in her mind and that's a norm. So this is something I obviously want to do in the future and stuff, but really understanding the pain points and how to fix them in society through behavioral change for women. But we're a long way from there. It's going to be a 3-4 year project, obviously over time, but yeah.
Even the part that we're scared, like women are much more environmentally aware. We're much more aware of our environment because they have to
Exactly.
protect themselves, right? So
Exactly.
because we walk in a street, you think, oh my God, what's gonna like?
Yeah.
There are so many other thoughts that run through your mind.
Completely. My brother walks literally like 40 minutes a day. Like the office not as far from my house. I can walk 20 minutes. I walked this morning, because then the weather is really nice and stuff. But I don't do it as often. I want to try to do it more because I can get stopped on the street. I can get looked at. People ask, I just don't want that. Especially at night, for example, when I go back, like I just don't want. I want to avoid this moment as much as I can, because who are you? Who are you to be doing that? Like who gave you the power over me?
Yeah,
So it's like this. And we talked about it before, but even when I go to conferences and seminars, like a lot of people, as a woman, I don't know if you remember when Hillary Clinton was like against Trump,
yeah,
and they only judge what she wore.
yeah.
Like, like why is that even a factor? You're your own person. If I want to go with a shirt and a pants, that's who I am, that's my identity. Why does Mark Zuckerberg do it and not me?
Yeah.
And again, as a woman, you could just wear whatever you want, the skirt, however, it's who you are. It's your brand. It's your entity. It's your personal brand. Do whatever you want. It's who you are. Don't judge me when I'm on stage. Judge me for what I have to say. And luckily enough, it didn't happen. But with other women that came to me and they were like, oh, sometimes I wear this and people judge me. I'm like, okay, why? Because the woman wasn't confident enough to carry herself on stage. Because if you're not confident in yourself, people are not going to listen to you. So be confident, walk on stage, be on your A game, know that's who you are, that's how you dress, that's your style, that's your trademark. Be simple, be engaging. They're gonna eat it up. They're gonna love it. Forget about the rest. It's your trademark.
It's amazing advice.
Mm.
And hopefully we'll get there where women are less judged for everything around
This,
a lot. Like we even see it in the red carpet. Women, like
yeah,
it's just more often. It's just like that's the one most talked about thing.
yes, exactly. And the problem is, the mere exposure effect. Because we're so exposed to this, we think it's the norm. Because we're
Yeah,
so exposed to like that judgment, we end up judging. Even
yeah,
when I'm in rooms, like luckily enough, I've got again friends I love so much, and I'm lucky enough to have that. We support each other, we don't judge each other. But I've heard so many stories that make me realize how grateful I should be. Where it's like, oh, my best friend said that this happened. I was like, she's your best friend. She should be your trooper. She should be your support. She should be someone that's there for you. She's your best friend. She's your trooper. So again, just making sure that you have the right people around you. And if you feel like you don't, then explore the world. Like explore new people, join societies, join networking events, join clubs, because that's where you'll meet like-minded people. Don't just stick with what you were taught to from when you were a child, especially a very community-driven society where we've known each other since we were like 2 years old. No, step out of this and know how unique you are, and meet other like-minded, unique people around you.
allow yourself to grow.
Yeah, allow yourself to, exactly. If you don't allow yourself to grow, if you don't create that space, that room, literally it's not gonna happen. You need, and I always say, if you're quite spiritual, but manifestation doesn't happen if you don't put the action. It doesn't happen if you just think about it. You have to put an action and you have to show intention. If you show intention and you've got the thoughts, you're taking action for it. It might happen because you're working towards it. So even create mood boards, journal, see yourself in there. The world is amazing. The world is up to grasp, like the nature, traveling, the parks, everything is to inspire your mind. And it's just so rough when I see other girls being in the box because the box doesn't even exist for me. And I hope that my experience and your experience, Emma, like are gonna inspire other people and the women you're talking to because we're there, we exist, and you could see that if you put that intention and if you know who you are and you know your worth, things happen because everything else is just noise, literally noise that you can ignore if you find your inner ground. And that's like a really important thing to keep in mind. And I hope we can inspire other people.
I love it.
Yeah.
So, what do you think? How do you think women in leadership position can help society as a whole? What do you think we can do?
I
Um,
think I think if women support each other and all of that, the world should be led by women. We see a lot of different experiences where because women are very very strong in terms of emotional intelligence. Like
yeah,
we look around us and like you said at some point we are very aware of our surroundings because we're used to being quiet. We're scared and we're like, oh, is someone following us? Is someone talking to us? So we're so used to being so open and looking around and observant. So I think women in leadership position are in such a good place to change the pace. But I do think that there's still a ceiling to reach seniority when you look at like very, very senior levels. And that's because we got to a point where in some industries, there are a lot of junior people in like they're female, but then when you go up, they're more traditional players that have been here for
yeah,
20, 30, 40 years. So I think what we have to do though is get to a point where we create the right diversity and inclusion teams, like we have a gender team here, for example, where you set out the right initiatives, the right outreach programs, the right things, because a company would benefit so much from a woman in power because that woman has been through so many experiences, and those experiences would actually set out her creative output. So anything you experience, your resilience, your visionary thinking, all of that inspires the output of the company. It would inspire more of those outreach programs, more of into hiring and recruitment. It would inspire the bigger picture thinking, it would inspire product development, solution development, because that resilience is your strength as a
yeah,
woman. And I think we need more of that. We need more resilient people at the top. We need more people that take risks. We need more people that explore, because a woman at the top is someone that went through a lot to get there. So we need more of those women. And I hope in the future, a young girl won't go through a lot like we did. I hope that they'll be resilient because they went through very, very positive experiences and into the world, not negative experiences. I hope that that resilience comes from learning and seeing other things and experiencing positive things and the world, but not as much negativity as we did to kind of get in a room.
yeah,
But yeah, more resilient women on top means that there are going to be better outputs, and it's going to affect the bottom line because you're an innovator and you've learned to innovate. So hopefully we can have more women innovators, and a company would benefit from diversity of thinking and diversity of thoughts. And like we said, potentially making things like tech and VR less biased towards men, making facial coding, algorithmic facial coding, a bit less bias towards men, working towards that, working towards better learning, the better output and research is really going to help. So the companies that win the race, that will win the race at the moment, are the ones that are going to have one woman at the top. They're going to give their real, unfiltered, transparent opinion about what needs to change.
and
So I
being
hope it's
able
going
to
to happen.
take that transparent opinion from a woman is what society need to work on.
Yeah, exactly. The problem is society sometimes thinks that, okay, if it comes from a woman, it means that, it's not as, it is robust, but oh, it needs to be like stamped out by a guy, for example, or like someone. But that the problem is some industries are a bit behind, like finance, a bit more behind than us, for example. Like we got to a point where a woman's voice is like heard a bit more. It's not way more at this stage because we're embracing that, because we've seen money, we've seen like investment outcomes, we've seen like monetary outcomes from a woman's
Yeah,
decisions, we've seen it in at Behave, in my work, how much it affected our company and vice versa. Like we've seen the input from women here. So
yeah,
I think in some industries it's going to take more time, but hopefully we're at the right space. our industry, and I hope that what we do is going to inspire other industries adjacently, especially finance, because that's where finance is a bit complicated in terms of like women. I hear a lot of stories there, but hopefully we can like inspire different women in male-dominated industries, male-dominated networking events. Create more networking events for women in finance, please, for God's sake. Yeah.
I hope someone is listening. We have a request here.
We have, yes, please, more women-owned and women-led and just women-focused events in finance, please.
I will. Well, we'll all put our thinking caps on and try to figure out
Great.
how to get it. Who do we know in finance to try to motivate them in the right
We
direction?
know, yeah, we know some people. We should start.
Oh,
We
we
should
always
start
do.
like pulling some strings.
Exactly. Great. We can. We're almost there. Really, last question. Last thoughts of what do you think is the most important quality of a female leader? I think you mentioned resilience a few times, so I think it's on the list. Anything else?
I think resilience, obviously, we talked about it, empathy.
Mm-hmm.
So be able to understand new people in the team. So I've had this experience where a new woman, a new girl joins, and then I don't know, automatically she comes and gravitates towards me. And she's like, oh, what do you think I should do? Because my energy is open to them. And I'm just like, you know what? I'm here so you can learn from me. So this empathetic energy, a great listener. Not everyone's going to be like you. A great leader should know that not everyone is like you. People come because they have their strength. Otherwise, one people would run a company and just stick there. People come with their strengths. So listen to them, be empathetic, see where they want to perform and how they want to perform. If they don't like something, play around it, try to make it more interesting for them, get someone to kind of to mentor them, coach them. So just really being quite empathetic. I think communication skills are very, very important. I think obviously it's extremely important to obviously like have that type of interpersonal skills, know how to communicate, but find your flow, find your vibe, find your rhythm. Who are you? How do you speak? How do you carry yourself? And it goes back to the personal brand, your identity. If they don't see your face, and who are you? What's your trademark? And how do you carry yourself in this world? And don't conform. Be whoever you want to be, because that's what your uniqueness, that's your spark. And don't be afraid to be that person. You exist and you're working in a certain field because of it. So I think it's quite important, obviously, as well. I think a point that I didn't talk about a lot, but I think it like relates to the other points in general, is that sometimes you need to know that being authentic and being quite, not like sugarcoating things, but being quite strong and assertive, it's not a problem. It's not. Because those that are going to say, oh, it's too bossy, it's too, they're not people, especially in this world, they're not people that are going to get too far eventually. Because as a woman, if you say a certain argument and you're quite assertive about things, it doesn't mean that you're bossy. It just means that you're doing the exact same thing that your men counterpart is doing, but you just look like you look like. So keep being bossy, not bossy, but as bossy. It doesn't mean you're bossy. It means you're great at being who you are. So be bossy, be assertive, be a great spark in the room, and realize, this is the more important part, that every step that you take, every project that you work on, every client that you win, everything that you do is going to help another woman. Because the more you build your brand, the more you build your face, the more you build your credentials, the more other women are going to be inspired. So this is the final thing I wanted to say, because that's how it's been for myself, but also for Lebanon and for my community and for Lebanese women. I've always thought this way. I was like, okay, if I do that step, it's going to not only make my mom proud, my dad obviously proud, my parent and my siblings, my grandma, my aunts, everyone. It's going to make a woman in Lebanon see me and be like, oh, you know what, I can do that. And the amount of LinkedIn emails I got, or emails, or even my alma mater talking to me, be like, please, can you speak to, if I change one person's lives, I mean, it's just going to make my life, so remember that you have a purpose as a woman in this world, as a corporate woman, and just remember that, and hopefully it's going to help us all. But yeah, should be your ground. You're like constant. I'm doing this for myself, but also for other people that might get inspired.
I love it. And I think that's a great way to end the interview.